He wouldn't let anybody say he couldn't do anything. You know, if his mind was set and he wanted to do it, there was nobody in the world that was going to stop him.
Nothing really limits him.
It was very inspirational, and it gave me the will to continue and to be the best that I could be. My name is Peter Freer. I'm the World Lightweight Kickboxing Champion, and I teach here at Rondé's Kitchener Kicks for Seafood Dave. I have a nickname for him. I like to call him SSD, which is Super Seafood Dave. Well, Dave's been very inspirational, and the reason why is that he does have a prosthetic limb, and when nobody would give him a chance to be a martial artist, he ended up in our club. And as an athlete, to see a gentleman with such handicap trying as hard as he could and doing as well as he did, it was very inspirational, and it gave me the will to continue and to be the best that I could be.
Me and David have been together for 33 years, and since I've known him, always pushes himself, does skiing. You know, when he's on the disabled ski team from Ontario, or for Ontario, people would come up to him and say, "So what's wrong with you?" Because they wouldn't even realize that he was missing a limb. And he so enjoyed skiing all the time. He always had to go faster and faster. You know, he's a volunteer fireman. He did the skiing. He was the coach for the disabled team of Ontario. He drove a transport truck, and now he does this. So no, nothing really limits him.
He's a black belt, which is a very high honor to get and a very hard honor to receive, especially with his handicaps, without having you know, a real leg, a human leg. So can you imagine having to do the skipping and the running and the training and the kicks and the different sequences of moves that he has to learn? And they don't hand out black belts for nothing, so these moves have to be done properly, and he's managed to do that even though he's well handicapped. And I believe the reason that is because his mental attitude. He's got a very positive mental attitude, and it's carried him through the very tough times that he's been through. And if just look around at our club that he has taken over with the death of Seagung Rondé, Seafood Dave has now taken over the club when it looked like the club wasn't going to make it, and he's done a great job with it. And we have 200 students now, and a full curriculum that involves everybody from children to older seniors.
Not sure what initially inspired me to the martial arts, but it was back in the 60s at our home we were living in Sarnia at the time. And I thought, wow, that looks really neat. I think we'll get into that. We're gonna make something happen here. So I quickly took a pair of my pajamas and stuffed them full of newspapers and hung that from a tree. That was gonna be our punching bag. And I also got a hold of a bunch of my mother's pencils, which I kind of regretted a little later because we'd place them between boards and break them with our karate chops. And I more or less was the teacher for the kids in the neighborhood, but no, I'd had no training whatsoever in the martial arts, just what I'd seen on television. It wasn't until I got into my teenage years, the Kung Fu TV show, Bruce Lee movies, things like that, that inspired me at that time. Said, boy, I think I really want to get into the martial arts now. I was about 16 at the time. And I distinctly remember going down to Hatashita's karate judo studio, which is in Waterloo Square at the time, with a friend of mine, and getting all the info on joining karate and what was involved with that and how quickly could we do it. And I quickly ran home with the contract agreement, and because I was under 18, my father had to sign it. And of course, at that time, and a lot of clubs today still do, where you sign up for a year and the agreement says you're going to pay for 12 months whether you're there or not. And that didn't appeal to my father too much, so I was a little dejected. Became further dejected in the extreme case the very next day, as I had a part-time job during school at a local car wash. And the day after we had gone down to the Hatashita studio was when I had an accident at the car wash that crushed my foot, ended up ultimately costing me that appendage of my body. And so after that moment, most certainly martial arts was one of the furthest things from my mind. I kind of had two options. I could, with the damaged foot I was left with, I could make some, or have some custom shoes made and more or less hobble around, and I'd still have my leg and everything else. Or the other option was, and I later learned this was going to get me more active sooner, was to amputate the foot and get me back on my feet, my own and my artificial one, as soon as possible. And this is ultimately what I decided. The year I took in making that decision was, I tell people, that was the year I grew up. I went from, paranoid at losing my toes and other parts of my foot from the accident to, let's get rid of this thing and get on with life. I visited the various clubs in town, and the first few I went to kind of spoke to me apprehensively, saying, well, I don't know, we wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. Some of them said we wouldn't want you hurting our other students. Maybe martial arts isn't for you. And I again became a little dejected and started believing them, thinking, well, maybe this isn't for me after all. The last club I entered was Ronday's Family Academy of Self-Defense and Fitness, as it was called at the time. Scarlet Dragon Society was another name they had. And right away when I walked in there was just an air of difference about this club. And Master Day at the time showed me around. One of the first things I did was point out that I wore a prosthesis. I had an artificial leg, and his response was something along the lines of, oh, okay. And then we continued with the tour of the club, and I thought, all right, he doesn't seem too concerned about it. Maybe this will be all right. We got done the tour, and I commented, well, what about my leg? And he said, well, what about it? I said, well, and he said, well, does it bother you? And I said, no, it doesn't bother me, but, do you think I could hurt myself? What about if I hurt another student? Things that I had heard from the other clubs. And he commented, well, first of all, he says, the only limits you have in the martial arts, or anything in life for that matter, are going to be the limits you put on yourself. He says, I'll tell you that right now. And as far as the other guy goes, he said, read that sign to me. And I read the sign, said, Ronday's Family Academy of Self-Defense and Fitness. And he said, read it again. Ronday's Family Academy of stop right there. He goes, self. He goes, you worry about yourself. Let the other guy worry about himself, and I'll see you down here tomorrow. He was right. I returned the next day, And lo and behold, almost, well, 27 and a half years later, here I am as proprietor of the club.
From the beginning, they had a very solid connection. They had a really good relationship. I remember Seafood Dave, when he walked into the club. I was still just young back then, and he was, as I said earlier, he was almost like an uncle to me. And now he's still part of my family. Just seeing Seafood Dave, being able to overcome his disability with losing his leg at such a young age. He never let something like that stop him.
I like Seafood Dave because he's a good teacher. He helps a lot with the white belt class, the yellow belt class.
Completely by surprise, bestowed upon me was the second greatest honor I have had in my martial arts life. When I was bestowed the title of Sigong. The literal translation of Sigong is head of family or head of club in a martial arts club point of view.
I knew it was going to happen at some point, I just didn't know it would be so soon. I'm just amazed that they gave him that title.